Okay. Should be fine, right? Okay, so now we are going to implement everything that we have seen until now in the code. Okay, so we go to the, you go to the GitHub repository, and you have in week 11 this React QA login. Okay, that basically includes the starting point that we are going to modify now. Okay, and at the end of the lecture, there will be the full solution. Okay, so let's open it from the Visual Studio Code. I already opened it and tested it. Hopefully everything is working. So actually, let's have a look at the server first. Okay, so the server includes the index, okay, that contains all the routes. And of course, you will see a lot more code. You can also make a difference, remember. Sometimes it's convenient, let me take the old solution, like the optimistic update. So select for compare, okay? Select for comparing one is compare with selected here in the client, login. Compare with select. So you learn something new from Visual Studio Code. Maybe you can already do these things by yourself. You already tried, but you see the different side by side is always nice. Okay, so well, of course I just moved. We require passport, local strategy, the session, a user DAO because we have some additional queries to perform on the database, like retrieving. Checking if the user ID exists, like the email and so on. And yeah, that's basically what we should do on the server. And I just put this stuff into another file. Course options, you see what we did here? Course options now is not like before empty, okay? But there is a few options. I need to make it bigger. No. I cannot make it bigger because otherwise it doesn't give me the side-by-side. Anyway, origin, localhost 5173, credential true. Okay? Then, set up the passport. So really nothing strange. Maybe a little bit different from the slides, but you have this local strategy, you have a function, username, passport. You go in the database and you retrieve the username, the hash of the passport, the hash of the password, sorry, and in case you don't get the user, just say, well, I want to return this error message, and this will be returned later back with 400 something, like unauthorized. Serialize user, very simple. Okay, so basically we only store the user ID. That's enough, because when we get the ID back from the session, actually we go in the database and we retrieve all the information about the user. That's the decision we took in this code. Okay, you could store more stuff in the beginning and just retrieve it from the session, but not real advantage or disadvantage apart from a bit of load on the database, unless you need to retrieve updated information about the user. Okay, so in this case this solution would be a bit more preferable. My custom middleware is logged in, rec is authenticated. Next, so this is logged in, okay, will be put somewhere. You see here, okay, on any authenticated API. Okay, let's go back. Is logged in. Okay, so this is just a copy and paste. This is fine for your exam. Everybody can use this code. Of course, we provide the code, so we expect you to use the code. Okay, app use session. Just put this random secret here. Okay, just make sure, please change the string for your exam submissions. Not really fundamental, but it helps us, to be faster, because sometimes if you use the same string, we have the cookie set for the old user, and we might run into problems with your application. Okay. But typically we close everything, we restart everything, but you never know. Okay, but I mean just minor thing. Of course, use the passport, tell experts to use passport and so on. Okay. Actually, this difference is very minor. It's just about a few console log timeout and stuff, just to make things respond, take more time to respond. Okay, and so this is the very important thing. You see that it is logged in here. Okay, so when I add an answer, I want to be logged in because I want that there is a user which is actually the owner of the answer. And so to know which user is the owner of the answer, I need to be authenticated. And the owner is the user that authenticated before. Okay? So we are going from an application where you have just a list of answers and nobody owns anything because there's no users. Okay? Now there are users, and there is a list of users, and so each answer has an owner. Okay, so the database is also changed in this sense. But this means that now if there is an owner of the answer, I just want to identify which user creates and so owns the answer, which user check which user can delete answer, which user can edit answer, and so on. Okay, just to practice a little bit. Of course, everything could be public and anybody could do anything. Okay, but in general, I would like to introduce users now in this example, and so my requirements are now answers are owned by users, and I want users to operate with certain operations, delete and update only on their answers. Okay, any user can add answer, but the user is the owner of the answer. Okay, we cannot just assign it to somebody else. Okay, so this is creation of the answer. You see that from the fact that it's a post, right? Post API answers creates a new answer. Okay, and you see the difference here is that the respondent will disappear. Okay, the respondent is actually the owner of the answer. I don't need it from the client anymore. I can leave it there, but I just a way of confusing ideas. So it's better to remove it because I cannot take it from there. There is something that comes from the client. I don't trust the information coming from the client. There is an authenticated session. The owner of the new answer is the user that has the authenticated session. Okay? Okay, question ID. Well, maybe question ID, I forgot to add the question ID, sorry. No, it comes here. Yeah, I forgot to check. Okay, so the check is missing actually. Well, let's add it. I think you can do it on the fly. Yes. Okay. Save. I'll fix the solution while we see it. Okay, so actually, okay. So question ID. So the answer has to be attached to a certain question. Well, I mean, this information comes from the client. I mean, nothing I can do about this, right? So it's not stored in the session. It's because the user has touched the question and actually said, I want to add an answer. Okay, so the user has no information about this in the session. So it comes from the client. I mean, there's no other alternative. Okay. Okay, but you see here, respondent ID. Actually, now we have the ID and not the name. Why? Because we have two tables in the database, right? So let's have a look at the tables. I'm not sure if this breaks something. I hope not. Yes, it doesn't break. Okay. So answer questions, but now there is a user table. Okay. So user with an ID, email, name, could be first name, last name, salt, and password. Okay. Actually, password, that's the stuff we could have called hash. Maybe it would be better. Okay. So there are 5 users now. Enrico, Tescom, Enrico, and so on, Harry, etc. Each one has an ID, and so answers now have a foreign key that is the respondent ID. Okay? I mean, just standard stuff in database terms. So you need to design a database by yourself for the exam, but it's not that difficult. I mean, 3, 4, 5 table maximums are more than enough for the exam. Okay? I mean, typically 2, 3 tables contains the data that your application should handle. 1 table contains the user information, like username, ID, passwords, and so on. Okay? So actually, you see we have an answer that belongs to user with ID 3, 2 ID 4, and 1 ID 5. Okay? So when we create a new answer, we store as a new answer in the column respondent ID, we store the ID of the user that has been authenticated before. Okay? How do we take it? With rec.user, okay, dot whatever name you gave to the ID when you retrieve it from the database. So if you go to the DAO user, actually, you see that get user, okay, takes the ID and just map it to ID, so it's fine. Okay, just try to keep the same name; it's easier. Okay, otherwise you never know what's the name of the field. Okay, good. So rec.user.id is the ID of the currently authenticated user. Okay, and we are sure there is an authenticated session because we have put here is logged in. If there is no authenticated session, we don't execute the rest of the code. The is logged in will stop the execution of the code and it will return something back to the client. 400 something, say not authorized. Sorry, that's all. Okay? But if is logged in calls next, so it proceeds with the rest of the middlewares, at a certain point we can access rec user, and since we designed the user object in a way that it contains ID plus other information like we say the email, name, etc., we have the ID available. And this is trusted information. Okay? I also know on the client side, which is the ID of the user, which has authenticated before, but it's wrong to send it from the client to the server and use it, the value that comes from the client, because anybody can send any value. Okay? Any logged in user can make a malicious request and so on. By the way, many malicious requests typically come from inside users, authenticated users, and so on. Okay? Okay, and that's all. I mean, I just modified one field. Instead of the respondent, just the name, I put the respondent ID. I just deleted the column in the database. I've added another one with the ID. And just remember to set it. And remember that you need to set this on the server. Okay? You cannot send it from the client. I'm saying it so many times. Hopefully, well, you're not that many in the room, but I mean, at least you that are in the room and people listening get this right. Okay? We will search for this for sure at the exam. Okay? Okay, well, set timeout is not really important. Just I did it in the response. Put again is logged in, another authenticated API. Why? Because to update the answer, I decided that I need to be the owner of the answer. Okay, so I need an authenticated session But be careful, this is not enough, okay? Because I need to check at a certain point. Well, here in the update answer, you see that I need to check that the user associated with the session has the permission to update the information of the answer that is identified by, I don't know, ID, the ID of the answer, okay? This can come from the body, from the URL, from whatever, okay? And this has to come from the client because it's the one I clicked. I don't know if I clicked the first, the second, or the third, or the fourth, okay? Of course, this information comes from the client. But who is the authenticated user needs to come from the session on the server, rec user ID, okay? And let's have a look at the update answer, okay? Update answer, you see, now it has been modified because it has another parameter, user ID, update, answer, set, etc., where ID equal to and respondent ID equal to, okay? This is the check that makes sure that only the authenticated user can modify its own answer, okay? You can do the check in the way you like. You can do two queries, like I do first a select to check which is the owner of the answer. Then I write if, okay, if it's the same as the rec user ID, I proceed. Otherwise, I say, well, not authorized, okay? Or you can delegate this operation to the query. It's fine. I mean, both solutions are okay. In this case, typically, it's so easy to change the query. You just have an additional condition on the where in the SQL. So I would say for simple cases, this is probably the easiest thing to do, okay? Because you just need to do an operation. You have the data that you need to check, the owner, directly in the same table. You don't have to do joins and stuff, complicated stuff. So, I mean, just add to the update, delete, and so on, SQL strings. It's fine, okay? They will not succeed in case the condition is not met. So it means they will not update or they will not delete, which is fine for us, okay? Of course, if the condition is more complex, I need to check that the user belongs to a certain set, and then the user, there's another object that is connected to this one that also belongs to the user, and so many other conditions to be checked, maybe with other queries and so on. I need to write some additional code, okay? That's normal, it's expected, and it's checked at the exam as well, okay? In simple cases, you can just, modify some queries, SQL queries, and basically you solve your problems, okay? Okay, just be careful. Rec user ID, not IDs coming from the client. Rec body ID is wrong. Okay, well, actually, rec body ID is something else probably, but I mean, rec body user ID is wrong. Okay, we cannot trust that information, and the problem is that the application will work. Okay, because when you test it, you pass the right ID, and of course it works. Okay, but it's wrong from the point of view of security because you are providing the information to be checked. Of course, I provide the correct one. I want everything to succeed. Okay, but the malicious attacker will provide something to, create problems to your backend, to the server and so on. So we'll delete, I don't know, even random answers from your database, okay? Even without knowing IDs, just trying to guess IDs, okay? Good. So the vote, okay, the vote is logged in. Okay, that's my choice. That depends on the text at the exam. Okay, so my choice for this example was actually anybody, even without authentication, can upvote or downvote. We don't really care. But to perform delete and edit, you must be the owner. And addition can be done, but only if you are authenticated, as we saw before. Okay? Because we need to have an owner that cannot be nobody. Okay? ID 0, I don't know. Okay? So the voting the answer actually does not change with respect to the previous code. And delete, again, is logged in, same story. Delete answer, if you go to the delete answer, you will see the additional check in the query. Okay? You need to check that the respondent ID corresponds to the one that is associated with the session. Okay. Oops. So, and then you have a few more APIs to handle the user, but it's just copy and paste. Okay, so post API sessions. I mean, a little bit more complex than the slides, but I mean, the meaning is the same. Okay, just a bit better handling of some conditions. Delete session current actually just performs the logout. You see the logout here. And this one is also useful. I decided to have this get API sessions current. Okay. Why current? I mean, just to differentiate it from get API sessions that actually, in our mind, for regulation would return the whole list. Okay. So slash current means the current session for the user. Actually, you don't want to return information about all the users. Of course, this is an authenticated API. Yeah, actually, you see, it doesn't use the middle, it just uses the function direct. I mean, so you see something different in the code. But I mean, the principle is the same. And what does it return? Actually, rec user. And user is retrieved on the server side. And user will be set only if the session is authenticated. And it will be set with the user that authenticated before in the session. Okay? What does the rec user contains? Actually, we decided it here. Okay? Yeah. ID, username, and name. Okay? Because that's the object that we retrieve from the database, and it's retrieved by passport when it has to deserialize the session. So you remember that deserialize here. Get user by ID. Okay, that's the call that reconstructed the rec user value. What you return here with this user is what you find in the rec user in the session. Okay, so get user by ID is actually this one. Okay, so it's actually this one that you find as rec user inside the session. Okay. But again, you don't have to invent anything. I mean, you just need to modify things like you have an admin, okay? An administrator, you need to store this information somewhere in the database. You might want to retrieve and add this information here. So it's available for your code on the server, and you can also return the information on the client, okay? Some other information associated to the user, just modify these lines and retrieve what you store in the database. Okay, so, well, all the rest of the stuff has been updated to reflect this modification. So when you add something, you need to provide an ID and not a name, and so on. That's a README as well, I hope so. Yes. Don't forget to write your password somewhere, okay? Because if you hash your passwords and then forget, you need to change your hash in the database, okay? There's no way to retrieve the password. Just use simple password. I mean, we don't really care. It speeds up the testing during the exam, okay? It's also, I would say, appreciated, okay? Oh, by the way, there are guidelines already for the exam on the website. Before I forget, I will repeat it in the last lectures, but you see, exams and rules, you already see you know, some stuff which is there actually from the beginning of the course. Oh, it's version 1, but actually it's version 2. I already updated it. Sorry, I need to change it. I mean, there are also some frequent errors. It's worth having a look. It's quite a long document because I try to collect many errors that happens often at the exam. Okay, the red ones and the one in the first part are the most problematic. Okay, and the more you go down in the document, the less critical the errors are. Just sometimes they are annoying and so on. But I mean, the ones in the beginning are really dangerous and risk you not to pass the exam. Okay, risk that you don't pass the exam. Okay, so yeah, let's go to the client. Okay, server is almost done. I think, I mean, I always give you the modified SQL code to create the database. So for the exam, just take this code as we did in, I think, week 4 or 3 or 4. Just run it with the DB browser for SQLite, and you create the database, you save it, and it's fine. Okay? So just create tables and so on. Of course, you need to have the salt, the passport, and put the ID for the respondent ID and so on. Okay, and adjust the data accordingly. Okay, and of course the hash for your passport, you need to compute it with the website I showed you before, because otherwise it becomes a bit complicated. I mean, you can compute any way as long as it works. Okay, we just try to provide the simplest way to do things. Okay, let's go to the client. And now the client is still not working with the server, I mean with the authentication. Okay, I just prepared the page, but we still need to integrate it in the rest of the application. So let me start the server. Oops, server here, nodemon, nodemon index. Client npm run dev. Okay. So that's the usual application, right? Nothing really special. The same as we left it on Monday. Okay. It loads the answers in the beginning at mount time. Okay. For the I don't remember what's the name of the component. At mount time, it has a use effect that goes towards the server asking for the questions. Okay. Okay. Question and answers. Okay. So the server is already the new one, so we can upvote, like downvote, and so on. We cannot delete anything. Okay, you see, delete response 401 unauthorized. Okay, because we didn't establish any session yet, and that's the part we need to do. But you see that response is just can be a JSON, it can be whatever you want. But the point is that we don't give back the information because there's no session. Okay, so actually, from the security point of view, it's good because, I mean, the server recognizes there's no session, nobody has authenticated, so I'm not giving you the permission to perform the operation. Okay? You requested to delete something. I think it was answer number 1. Okay? I mean, it checked if it's yours or not. No, it didn't check it because there's no session. If there is a session, second step, it will check if it's yours or not. Okay? So first, let's try to implement the authentication on the client side. Well, first of all, you need to have a page where you ask for username and password. Okay? So actually, the page is already prepared. So let me close some stuff here so I don't get confused. So in components, there's an out component, brand new, okay? It's just a form, login form, username and password, okay? And it contains a form with email and password, okay? Just call them username and password, okay? Because it's convenient for Passport. Passport expects an object that contains two properties, username and password, okay? Otherwise, you can change them, but it's configuration options, and I mean, so boring and so useless. I mean, because it doesn't really matter for us what's the name of password. We just use the name that password requires, and that's all. Okay, so we just need first a way to show this form, login form. Okay, it's a component like any other component, React component. Where do you decide when you show one component or another component? Well, in app we have a router, right? So there's a router somewhere here, the routes. In the routes, we need to make room for this component, okay? Well, this also makes us think, well, maybe we should use a new route for login. I mean, not really strictly required, but probably a good choice, okay? A new page, a new view, probably it's good to have a new route, okay? Let's try to implement it in this way, okay? Route, let me see, just to make sure. Yes, okay. At which level we are implementing it? Well, I would say at the main level, at the top level, it's fine. If you like to have the login inside your outlet, so inside the menu and the header and so on, just put it inside the nested routes, so, along with the nested routes. Otherwise, just put it outside, it's fine. I mean, React will render anything we ask for, okay? So route, path, it's path, right? Yes. Path, login, okay? And then element, what we are going to show. Well, actually, we say login form, right? Login form. Okay. That's enough for now. Save, okay? Actually, there's no place where we can navigate to login at the moment. There's no button, login and so on, okay? So just test it by entering the URL directly, just to make sure everything works. You know that I like testing things as soon as it is possible, right? Because you catch the errors early in the development, so it's easier to fix them. Okay, so that's a route for the login. It's just a very simple login form, okay? You can see it here as well. Okay, so routes, login form, okay? It has two states, username and the password. It's a third state for the errors. And two buttons, login and cancel, okay? Now they are not working because we need to decide what they are doing, okay? Just see the, yes, the state, username, password, and error message. You saw that I already initialized the state with a good username and password just because it's easier to test, okay? And then for the exam, as you like. If you want to leave a pre-stored value, is fine for us. It's also, it's a sort of recommended because it helps us to test things more quickly, but I mean, not strictly required. Actually, what's the point here? That we have a submit button, I think. Yes, submit, login, and the cancel button that basically does navigate /. So the cancel button is already working. Okay, it's a navigate, so just navigate in the router. The other one is not working. Okay, why? Because actually we need to perform some actions. Okay, well, action, no, maybe it's already working in the sense it's sending a request to the server. Okay, I think, yes. Send the request. Oh, we get a response, but the point is that we got this message because actually what happened is under submit, do login is here, API login, so it sent the request to the server, it get a response, but no, actually, sorry, which one was failing? I think do login is fine. Props login successful. Login successful is not set, it's undefined, but it's in an then catch instruction, okay? So just be aware, somebody of you experienced this in the last lab. When you have a runtime error in JavaScript like this, I mean, the code should have stopped, okay? I thought it would have stopped, but I mean, actually what happens is that actually JavaScript raise an exception that, let's say we can say it's sort of converted in a rejected promise, and so the next catch takes it and just said wrong username and password. Okay, that's what happened. But I mean, if you have the login successful is correctly set, everything will be fine. So let's do it. So login successful equal to what? We need to think here, okay? Let's say we design a function, login successful, okay, not so much fantasy, okay? And we go up and we write the login successful. Const login successful equal to, yeah, actually it takes something, okay? It takes the user, the stuff that comes from the client, the server, sorry, that we want to store in the client, stuff that we saw here, this JSON, okay? ID, username, and name. That's because in the server, we decided that the post, API sessions, at a certain point, returns rec user, okay? And rec user contains 3 fields, ID, username, and name, okay? And so this one is what determines what we see here and what we will get on the client here, okay? Because in the login successful, we pass user, and user is what we get from the API. Okay, API does fetch, post API sessions, everything is fine, get the user. The user is set as the parameter of the fulfill the promise, so it can be used. Okay, it's a return value of, let's say, the fetch, okay, if we can say so. Actually, fetch returns a promise, but if we say await promise, it's sort of a return value, right? So, props login successful user, so user, it's fine, open the bracket, and then that's the point. Where do we store such information? When you have information coming from the server, actually with React, the only place where you can store it is a state. We create a new state, okay? Set user, set user, okay? So let's save it for now, and we go up where there are all the states. Which point? I think it's the last one. Let me make things equal. Yes. Just add a new state. I mean, it's normal. At the exam, I will see a lot of states here. Quite normal. Const user, set user. Set user. Use state. And what's the initial value? Initially, it does nothing, right? So you can have the empty object. You can have undefined. Okay, what's the difference? Well, actually, I would like to have something that if I try to use it gives an error. Okay, so probably undefined is a bit better. Okay, you cannot write undefined dot something, while you can write the object dot something and it gives you undefined, it becomes more difficult to debug. But it's just, you know, convenience here, because if everything is fine, I don't use user until I got a successful authentication. Okay, this could be enough. In most of the code you see around, sometimes you keep two states, because one state is just, you know, to keep information about the user, like here, and another state, useful state, could be if the user has logged in or not. Okay, logged in, set logged in. New state, state in the beginning is false. Okay, so the user is not logged in yet. I mean, it's sort of duplicate state, I agree with you. But sometimes it's very convenient, okay? Because, like I was saying before, if you put the empty object here, and then you need to check if the object is actually empty. It's really difficult, okay? It's not like an empty string. And so, you know, having a Boolean state sometimes can be helpful. I would say I recommend you try to follow this pattern at least in the beginning, and then use what you think is suitable for your case. Okay? So there's a second state. When there is a second state, two states representing the same thing, the point is that we need to keep them in sync. Set logged in true. Okay? Save. Okay, so we are almost done. And it says that, yeah, now there is a session. We can even try to test it, right? So let's try. So stop, start. Okay. So let's start with the login. We still have no button to go to the login page. So just I clean up the network tab, login. Okay. See the post is successful, you get the response. Okay, good. So now in the storage, there's a lot of other stuff, but there should be connection seed, this one, okay? There's a cookie, okay, that has been set by the server, okay? Connect seed as, etc. And you can see it in the network tab as well. Headers, it's an header, okay? Response header, set cookie, connection seed, etc. Okay? Oops, I don't know how to unselect things. Okay, so the set cookie happened. Now the browser has the cookie and will send it for every request we are going to make. Okay, to the same server. Good. Just one more thing. You see there's an attribute, HTTP only. That's true. Okay, we didn't do anything. It's a default configuration. It's good. Okay, it means we cannot access it through JavaScript, but we don't need to access it. Okay, it's good this way. So no problem with cross-site scripting. JavaScript cannot access this cookie. Okay. Of course, we are still missing the secure. I mean, because if we introduce the HTTPS, it's a lot of configuration effort for nothing from our point of view, because we want to develop, test things, okay? In an actual application, this would happen on a HTTPS connection. Okay, good. So now I think we can try to perform an operation that requires authentication. Harry, I think this one was the one for which I'm the owner. So let's try to delete this one. Okay. So the second one, let's click. Well, network. And then let's click. Let's see what happens. Great, okay? We performed our first authenticated request to the server. It went through, everything was fine, and it was executed by the server, okay? So delete API answer to request, nobody, but there are headers. In particular, there is the request header. You see the cookie here? I mean, a lot of other stuff because, I mean, on localhost, everything gets confused, but you see the connected seed that we saw before, okay? Inserted automatically by the browser. We did nothing. Everything was done by the browser, okay? And the thing that we requested was to delete an answer for which we were the owner, okay? In case we request something for which we are not the owner, okay, like the first one, I think. No, it doesn't get through, okay? So we reload the list of answers from the server, okay? And it has not been deleted. Yes, I mean, response could have been better, okay? That says that we got, yes, 0. Number of affected rows, 0, okay? Because we ran the delete query, and the delete actually modified 0 rows because the answer was there, but the owner was different. So actually the where clause didn't match anything, okay? If you want to handle the error in a better way, you need to modify something both on the client and on the well, the server probably is enough. So 0 is fine, but you need to change what you show on the client, okay? So actually the delete answer had, and respondent ID, this evaluated to false for all the rows in the database, so no delete operation happened, okay? The bad thing is probably that actually we answered 200, which is probably not that nice, okay? But I mean, the important thing, the thing we will care most at the exam is the fact that you made a check on the server. That's the important thing, okay? Actually, such kind of operation typically should not happen because you're not the owner. So actually, a good designed applications, but just for users' convenience, is to disable the buttons that you cannot use if you are not, let's say, in this case, the owner of the answer, okay? So let's do this, this modification, which is so easy to do, right? So app now has the information about which user has been logged in, right? Actually, it's not used. You see from the color, right? Actually, now we use it. We pass it to the answer list, I think. It's in the route answers. Yeah, let me just check if we did it there. Yes, user, okay? It's a state. We can pass it around in the components as any other value. Okay, save, don't forget about this. And the answer components, so I think the answer table, right? Answer components, user, let's see, user. Okay, so here, answer table, yes. User, answer rows, we need to tell which user is actually the user that is logged in. You can pass the user object until you get the point where you need to use user ID. You can decide to extract the user ID at a certain point. I mean, it's up to you, really up to you, okay? Here I decided to rename the attribute and just say, write something like this, just to show some code, okay? So, actually, props user, it's set, yes, props user ID. No, it was like end, okay? So if prop users is set, we use prop users ID, and we pass it to the answer row. The answer row is here. There are the answer actions. Answer actions. Yeah, I decided to change the name again. Okay. So let's say disable user actions. Okay. Try to give meaningful names sometimes in the attributes, but just for you actually. The React doesn't get confused. Okay? Oh, yes, here. Here we have props user ID, right? User ID. Okay? Actually, disable user action is supposed to be a Boolean from the name. So, if the value of the owner of the answer, and now we have the owner of the answer, because we modified the database, we returned the owner of the answer. If you don't trust, just check answers. You see? Actually, it's a respondent ID. Okay? We also have the name because we want to show names, not numbers, right? But, I mean, the ID. So, respondent ID. Save. And disable user actions. That's here. And so, actually, which one should be disabled? I think the delete, right? So, the delete and the edit. So after the on click, yes, here, disabled. There's a convenience attribute from Bootstrap, React Bootstrap, props, what's the name? Disable user action. Okay? And the same here. Whoa, you see, the one below is a bit different, right? Let's see if it already works. You see, this one has already been disabled. Okay? Actually, not so nice because I wanted this to be enabled. We will check the code later. Okay? But I mean, the point is that here you have a link, right? You remember we wrapped the button with a link, so it made us. It allowed us to navigate to another URL. Actually, I mean, either you have a way to disable the link, but it's probably better to just convert this button, okay, and use the, like for the others, okay, on click, and you do, yes, callback navigate was to navigate to this, okay. Navigate, yes, and then so you can disable it. It's very easy, right? Because the button has the property disable. The navigate, I mean the link. How do I disable a link? If I put a link, it's because I want to use it, right? So just delete the link now. Okay, save. Let's see. Okay. No, not sure. They type everything correct. Disable. Okay, save. Now it's disabled. Okay, now we can look up why this is disabled. I guess I have a partial idea if I'm right. It's probably because one of these is a string and the other is not. No, that's not the reason. So we need to search for why, okay? We will debug a little bit. So first, let me restart the client. Sometimes, no, don't be afraid to restart in the client because hot updating things is difficult, okay? So maybe something doesn't get updated correctly and so on, and it might be difficult, okay? So now I'm not logged in, so it's normal. Okay, how do I see that I'm not logged in? Well, actually, the cookie is still there. No, I'm still logged in, but the application doesn't know. That's the difference. Because the cookie is still there. Okay? And so let me just have a look up. You see the state is undefined. Okay, but I have the cookie, right? So actually, before fixing this, since the reasoning takes us to discover things, you see that I just reloaded the application, and actually I have the cookie, but the application doesn't know if it's logged in or not. I mean, this is not really required for the exam, but it's so nice that I give you a way to solve this issue, because sometimes you need to reload the application. Actually, in practice, when you reload applications, if you're logged in, the application doesn't ask you to re-authenticate, right? Because you have the cookie. But the point is, it's an HTTP only cookie, right? We cannot read it from the application. So the only way we have to know if we are logged in or not is to send a request to the server and see if the server can find a cookie. It will tell us something, which is also useful because actually we have this state which is now undefined, and we need to set it to the value of the user in case we are logged in. Okay? So we need to go to the server in any case. How do we go to the server when we load the application? We saw it a couple of weeks ago, I think. Right? So the use effect at mount time. So most of you at the exam will have a use effect in app, okay, in app that first of all checks if there is somebody who is authenticated or not, okay. So let's try to write this use effect. Okay. Let me do a bit of copy and paste because it takes so much time to write code. I have a solution from which I can copy things. I will publish the code, of course, at the end of the lecture. Okay. So, use effect. Empty array as a dependency. You want this code to run only at mount time. Async function, well, just because I wanted to make an async function, okay? So, I mean, not really any other reason. I could have said, API and so on, and then etc. Just to show some more code, okay? So you have different alternatives, and you can choose the one that you feel are best for your ways of programming, okay? So const user await API get user info. Luckily, there's a get user info somewhere that does, yes, localhost 3001 API sessions current. You remember that current that we said? It might be useful to know if the user is logged in or not. It comes useful here, okay? Credentials include. Don't forget the credential include. And during the lab, that's the easiest thing to get wrong. But once you fix it, everything is fine. And just ask us in case. User info, and we return the user info, is fine. Okay, so it's already there, it's already implemented, I already published it, because otherwise there's a lot of code to write today. Okay, and then if I get the user, I set the user, and I set logged in. Okay, both of them. It's fine. Save. Let's try again. Let me close this because I don't want to be confused. Okay, so reload the application again. Okay, let's see. App now contains the user because we did the request. Okay, current. And that's the user. Okay? Good. Then, what are we going to... Yeah, let me just show you. Cookies. I mean, we just delete the cookie. Delete the cookie. Okay? Cookie, I mean, we just delete it by hand, but let's say that you close, you open the browser again. Okay? There's no cookie anymore because it's not permanent. Okay? And you see the cookie is not here now, and the component now perform the request. Don't be worried of the fact that there is this 401, which by the way shows up also in the console. No problem. Okay, this is not an error. Actually, it's normal condition. We just checked if we are logged in or not. Okay, I mean, Firefox likes to print all APIs that returns an error in the console. We can do anything. Okay, and you see error unauthenticated user. Okay, and now, well, let's try to have a button to log in because I'm tired to type /login, right? So. And where do I put this information? Well, actually, a nice place to put this information, it's in the header, right? In the header, let me again copy and paste. Sorry for that. Header here. I think we just copy everything. We need to pass the user. Don't forget to pass the user. I mean, just the header as before, but we add something at the end of the header. Okay? And we have a props because we need to get, I mean, in this case, I don't care about the ID, I care about the name because I would like to say, well, this user is logged, but I mean, I don't talk about numbers, I talk about names. Okay? Okay, so my header is somewhere, my header here, the user equal to props user, and this needs to be passed to layout, so layout is somewhere here, user equal to user. This one should be the state, right? So no props. Okay, so now we have the login button. Okay, the login button has already been set to navigate to /. Okay, we do the login, and we come back, and you see signed in as, and this the information comes from the state. It's nice to show that, I mean, you're logged in as Harry, and now the buttons are disabled. I cannot tell you exactly why. I need to debug a little bit, but basically, you see that as an signed in or unsigned in user, I mean, user without a session, I can perform all the operation. The server doesn't care. If I don't put is logged in on the server side, I mean, it's like the old ways of calling the API. I mean, we don't care. But if it's an operation that requires authentication, we need to check if the user is authenticated or not. Okay? Okay, so let me think if there's something really important we still need to discuss. I'll use the same technique as before. Select for compare. Compare with selected, just to make sure we have covered everything. Yeah, the add button should be disabled as well. Okay, so the one of the things we should fix, because also only if we are logged in, the add button should be shown. Should be enabled, I would say. And so that's the problem as before. Okay, error message. What's the difference with error message? The answer, but we passed it. Yeah, we need to pass a user here probably. That's a bug, I guess. You know, you have many levels and you need to remember to pass properties at all levels. And by the way, this is also a reason why sometimes you might like to have the user information put into a context. You remember the context? It's a way of creating something, sort of properties which are available in all the application. You do use context with the name, and you can use it in any component. So you don't have to pass this information around in the whole application. And the user and the logged in status is one of the typical values that you don't want to pass around so much. Not because it's forbidden, it's because it's so boring. You're so error prone because you miss it in one place and then it gets undefined and so on. It creates problems, the code stops working and so on. Okay? So it's a good candidate to be put into a context. Okay? Okay, set answers and so on. Users should be fine. Yes. I think we covered. Oh, yeah, the other answer. Don't forget. No, this is well. Yeah, because we don't have the name. I mean, we can pass the name from the client to the server, but actually, I don't like this solution so much. So, I mean, the name is should be retrieved from the server. So passing it from the client is also nice. Logout, okay? Let's do the logout by the way. Logout is so easy. I mean, just an API like any other. Just do a delete on API sessions, okay? Don't forget that you have a state on the client. So if you have a user, you should set it to undefined. If you have a logged in status, you should set it to false, okay? Otherwise, you're actually logged out for the server, but in your client, you still appear as to be logged in because you still show the name and not the logout button, but the login button. No, vice versa, the login button, not the logout button, and so on, okay? Okay, set dirty, well, depends on the way in which you want to interpret the login operation, okay? Probably upon login, you might want to load the information, okay? Refresh the information from the client, it's okay. Sometimes you have access to new information, so it makes sense as well. So what's the difference? Oh, logout, yeah, I need to pass the logout as well, okay? So status logged in, the logout, because I need to have the function to be called on the click on the logout button in the header, okay? And yeah, last thing, props logout, okay? Last thing I want to show you is this one. You see the route, okay? /login, okay? Now, even if I'm logged in, let me show you. I'm logged in now. You see, I'm logged in, and if you go to the login, you still see the login, okay? But, I mean, this is a form. I mean, we could avoid to show the form if we detect that we are logged in, okay? So if logged in, just navigate to /. There's no reason to stay on logged in, okay? Otherwise, okay, show the login button. No button, the form, okay? Let me see the app and how it works now. Okay. Let's see if the logout works. Oh, by the way, now you see it works, okay? So there was a prop user that was not passed at a certain point in the tree of the components, okay? Good, and you see that only the button that corresponds to my answers are enabled now. And let's check if the logout works. Yes, great. So we finished the lecture, more or less, yes. You see the delete headers, okay? API session current, request, no payload, headers, I mean, there's headers, there's the cookie, okay? So the server knows which session should log out. No response. I'm not sure if the cookie disappears. I think not, okay? But I mean, this cookie is not connected to a session anymore on the server side, okay? So you have this value, but actually it's useless, okay? Because the server side broke the connection between this value, the cookie, so the session ID, and the actual information. So you can send it, the browser will send it because it still has the cookie here. The server will simply say, well, I don't know this value, I don't care. It's like you're not logged in, okay? Yeah, I think we covered everything, okay? So, yeah, if you have any questions, I think you can answer it. You can ask them now, or I mean, we will meet on Monday, right? According to the schedule, it's Monday. No, the schedule is missing here. Monday, and we will talk about the last topic. I mean, last, let's say, big topic that is required at the exam. I have almost finished the slides. I will publish them, I think, tomorrow. Okay? So we will talk about a more secure way of doing authentication using this OTP, which is so common nowadays. Right? So when you log in Gmail, whatever website, sometimes they require you to put an additional code sent by SMS, sent by email, sent, generated on a device, and so on. Okay? So we want to discuss this topic a little bit more. Okay? So I will commit the solution as soon as I go back to the office. Okay? And if you have no questions, I think that's all for today. It's been a long, long journey, but at the moment we have a good working applications, and let's say one that you can even deploy because it has users as in any, let's say, normal application, web application, and all the other functionalities, CRUD operations that can be performed on the server side. Even though, I mean, we have just a list of items of the same kind. Okay. So, thank you. We will meet on Monday. Okay, for the next topic.